You may proceed, Mr. Pretorius.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Uleman, you referred in your evidence to documentation sent to and from Advocate Similani. My instructions are that he was appointed National Director of Public Prosecutions during or about 2009. Are you able to recollect that?
To the best of my knowledge, that sounds quite correct, yes.
And that this investigation...
As you say, your instructions, Mr. Pretorius.
Yes, I'm instructed to investigate as to that effect. Perhaps instructions in the investigative sense rather than the adversarial sense.
Or you understand from the investigators or whatever. Just that it may give the wrong impression that you have a client.
True. Oh, I understand, yes, Chair. So perhaps I'll change that next time. Our information, too, is that this investigation would have fallen in the NPA under the auspices of the Special Commercial Crimes Unit.
Yes, those were we were dealing with them after we handed over the report.
SCCU.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, and that Advocate Mwebi was appointed the head of the SCCU shortly after the report of the SIU would have been handed to the NPA.
Yeah, I can't comment too much on that, yes.
But perhaps just for the record.
Yeah. And that was Advocate Mwebi?
Yes.
That you are referring to?
Mwebi, yes.
Yeah, okay.
The next document you refer to in your affidavit, Mr. Uleman, is referred to in paragraph 11.8.
Yeah.
And it appears in the supplementary bundle to your statement, Exhibit S11 at page 417. Would you go there, please?
I have it.
That's an extra Q8. Again, would you read onto the record the extracts to which you wish to refer in paragraph 11.8 of your statement, please?
I will. The Eversheds letter dated 15 November 2009 and addressed to the State Attorney, Cape Town, alleged that a copy of the SIU report was furnished to Bosasa Operations.
I'm sorry, Mr. Alderman. Where are you reading from? I'm at page 418.
Well, I'm reading from my affidavit, the extracts that I was referring to.
Yes, it's not necessary for the witness, Chair, to read the whole of the Mail and Guardian matter, which runs into several pages. We can do so if you wish, Chair.
No. I'm just trying to establish on which page he's reading from. He's starting.
Yes, he's reading from page 11 of his own statement, paragraph 11.8.
Okay. I thought there was a reference to the supplementary. Okay, page 11 of his statement. Okay, thank you. You may proceed.
Just for the record, Chair, the document referred to is at page 418 of the supplementary bundle, but he's going to read onto the record certain extracts which appear at paragraph 11.8 of his statement.
Thank you.
Shall I start again?
Yes.
The Eversheds letter dated 15 November 2009 and addressed to the State Attorney, Cape Town, alleged that a copy of the SIU report was furnished to Bosasa Operations Pty Limited by Mr. Gillingham's attorneys.
I'm sorry, Mr. Oyman. Your voice may have gone down after lunch. Just try again.
Let me bring the mic closer.
Yes,
there
thank you.
All right. Third time lucky then, Judge. I'll try again. The Eversheds letter dated 15 November 2009 and addressed to the State Attorney, Cape Town, alleged that a copy of the SIU report was furnished to Bosasa Operations Limited by Mr. Gillingham's attorneys. Neither Mr. Gillingham nor his attorneys could legally receive disclosure of the report unless they received the prior written consent of the head of the SIU. It is my respectful submission that Bosasa Operations is in possession of an unauthorized copy of the SIU report. The mere fact that they, and in brackets may have, received a copy of the report from an attorney does not in any way legalize their possession of the document. The SIU report clearly prohibits that unauthorized distribution and/or possession thereof. The confidentiality clause inserted in the report clearly states that disclosure of the contents amounts to a criminal offense.
You have dealt with those facts already. Just to confirm that from your knowledge, the leak would not have occurred, ordinarily speaking, from persons who worked with you under your jurisdiction.
Yes, that is correct.
Then if we could go to the next document to which you refer, that is at page 477 of the supplementary bundle.
I have it, yes.
That is a document addressed by Advocate de Kock to Advocate Machatle, Acting Regional Head of the Special Commercial Crimes Unit. And again, you have quoted two extracts from that document.
Yes.
And they appear in paragraph 11.9 of your statement. Would you read those onto the record, please?
All right. The SIU pointed out that they did not conduct a comprehensive financial investigation into the benefits allegedly received by Commissioner MT because of various limitations experienced during their investigation. The investigation of the matter is not yet completed and a charge sheet has not been drafted. Almost 200 statements have been obtained since the start of the investigation. We are still of the view that the investigation will take another 6 months to complete.
So now this communication is some 3 years after the report was submitted to the NPA, and it refers to statements that have been obtained and a view that the investigation would take another 6 months after the 26th of November 2012 to complete.
Yes.
Is that a realistic estimate given your knowledge of the matter?
I would think that would be reasonable at that point in time. They list over 200 statements obtained already, so yes.
Then if we could go to the last document to which you refer, and that is the memorandum dated 30 April 2013 from Advocate de Kock to Advocate Mkhwebe, Special Director of Public Prosecutions. It appears at page 481.
Yes, I have it.
Please read the extracts in paragraph 11 of your statement.
I am busy working on a draft charge sheet in respect of Patrick O'Connell Gillingham. The investigation against Gillingham has not yet been finalized and we still await the forensic audit report. Thus far, I'm of the opinion that it will be possible to enroll the matter during the second half of 2013, as indicated before. It would theoretically be possible to enroll the case against Bosasa or individuals mentioned in paragraph 1.3.1 above within the next 6 months from this date. It is very difficult to give an accurate estimate on future events, but I foresee the prosecution of both Bosasa and MT within the next 18 months.
Again, it seems that there has been some extension of the forecast time from what was said in 2012, but again, a far cry from 10 years from 2009.
Yes, that's correct.
Again, this sort of information, would it be of any interest or use to potential accused if it is leaked to them?
Yes, I believe it would. I mean, it gives insight into the tracking and progress of the investigation, what is still outstanding, where there may be shortfalls in the investigation and prosecution.
That then deals with the documents handed up to the Commission by Mr. Greasy, which he said had been leaked to him apparently unlawfully, and you confirm that.
That is correct, yes.
And you confirm generally, as I understand from your evidence, and to summarize, that all that information would indicate a selection, a knowing selection of documents to be handed to potential accused, which would be of use to them.
Invaluable, in my opinion.
Not a random selection.
Not at all, no.
There are a number of issues which you may still be able to assist the chair with, and if we can take the opportunity now to go through them with you. The first deals with the destruction of documents at the time the SIU began its investigation.
Yes.
That is dealt with in your report, the SIU report. At page 50 of the bundle.
Yes.
Who's Mr. Malan, or who was he?
So Mr. Malan is a cyber forensic expert who was appointed by the SIU to assist with the imaging and obtaining digital forensic evidence from Bosasa, which was going to be crucial for the investigation.
What happened in relation to the attempts by the SIU to obtain evidence and any delays, and what happened in the period of the delay? If you just, from your own recollection, tell the chair what actually happened, please.
Yes.
And I understand that you were with Mr. Malan when he attended at the premises.
Yes, that is correct.
What happened?
So initially, well, the meeting with, we had a meeting with Bosasa where they approached us and said they had information that we were going to conduct a search and seizure of their premises.
Had you given them this information?
Not at all, no. It was part of our planning at the time, so where they obtained the information, I'm not sure. But they approached us through their lawyers, and we met at council, and there was an agreement that they would allow us to image their servers and get access to the servers and image them digitally and forensically. Subsequent to that, there was a slight delay.
Why was there a delay? Why didn't you go immediately?
Well, I can't recall offhand the reasons for it, but they submitted that we couldn't go immediately. They would need time to prepare everything, and we would then be allowed an opportunity to go in.
Do you recall who the people were from Bosasa with whom you were dealing, so that we don't talk about just they?
Mr. Gritzi was at the meeting, so
yes.
he was the one who.
Yes.
And even when we met at Bosasa, he met us at Bosasa.
Yes.
Where we did the imaging of the servers.
Mm.
So we eventually did go to Bosasa. It was
Just before you go on and tell us what happened and what Mr. Malan and you discovered at Bosasa. Normally when you do a search and seizure, it's common knowledge that you would not forewarn the subjects of the search and seizure operation for fear that documents may be destroyed
Yes, that's correct.
or tampered with.
Yeah.
So is it usual to have a situation where not only do the subjects of the search and seizure operation have forewarning of the operation, but persuade the people who are going to conduct the search and seizure to hold off for a time
No, I wouldn't say
so
it's-
that they can, as you put it, prepare?
No, I wouldn't say it's usual at all.
What is the danger?
Well, it gives them an opportunity to sanitize the server, if I could put it that way, and be selective in what is there for us to image and destroy information. And when we do eventually go ahead and image the servers, that information would then be lost. So it would be records pertinent to the investigation that would be destroyed and lost.
What happened in this case?
We arrived at Bosasa. We met Mr. Gritzi. He took us to the servers. He took the server room. Mr. Malan then prepared to image the servers. And we did this over a period of a few nights because of the size of the servers that needed to be imaged. But I think it was the second or third night that we were there, Mr. Malan came to me and he said, look, you can see in the file directories that there seems to be a number of files that are missing. He suspects that there may have been files that were deleted. So he said he would pick it up in the course of his analysis, should that be true. Subsequent to that, when he had imaged the servers and he began the analysis of the information, he then reported to me that he had identified a particular software known as Eraser, which had been employed on the servers, and he said he had identified thousands of files. I think it was over 40,000 files that had been intentionally destroyed or deleted from the server.
But initially, you intended to go and carry out the search and seizure on a particular day.
Yes.
And you were asked not to proceed.
Yes, there was they gave an excuse to say that they can't do it that day. Someone wasn't available. I think they said they had to attend a funeral or something like that, and they weren't available. So they asked us for a delay of about 2 days or so, 2 to 3 days.
So you agreed to that request.
Well, my principals agreed to that, yes.
Yeah,
The SIU agreed to it, yes.
Yeah, the SIU
Yeah.
people agreed to the request.
Yes.
Were you then simply told that there's been this request, we have accepted it, don't proceed today, you'll proceed in 2 days' time or something
Yes,
like that?
that is correct, yes.
Yes. And as at that time, you had been an investigator for about, 10 years or so? Yourself, I'm just thinking you told us
Yeah,
you've been...
perhaps a little bit longer, yes.
Sorry?
Perhaps a little bit longer at that time, yes.
Yes, yeah. So you had quite some experience already.
Yes.
Had that kind of thing ever happened when you had wanted to carry out a search and seizure?
To me personally, no.
Yeah, you had
Yeah,
no,
it was
you
quite
had no
peculiar,
experience of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It did raise that concern that Bosasa seemed to have an inside track into the investigation at times. They would almost know what we were planning, or if we were planning something, they would try and obstruct it, which is why the head of the unit took this decision to separate the Bosasa investigation team from the rest. And we were given a specific area where all our documents and information was kept. In fact, we weren't even on the SIU servers. We were given a dedicated server outside of the SIU environment where we then conducted the investigation from there.
But at the time that you were told about this request, the reason that was given, was it sound to you?
Obviously, as an investigator, I had my suspicions that this was just delaying tactics.
So you had that suspicion?
I did have that suspicion, yes.
Yes. Did you raise this concern with
Yeah.
the SIU principals?
We had a discussion around it.
Yes.
And I mean, the decision was taken that they were given us access. We were going to proceed on a particular day. They've raised this issue, and that we should continue. We'll grant them the extra extension, and then we'll go in. I mean, our cyber forensic expert did tell us that if they did destroy files, it would be likely that he would find that they had destroyed files as well, which is what happened in the end.
But from your own point of view, what was your position? Do you accept the reason that was given as a valid reason not to carry out the search and seizure, or was the position that you raised the issue with your principals and they said whatever they said, you said whatever you had to say, but the decision remained?
Yes, like I said, I had my suspicions, but the decision was taken, and I raised my suspicions, and the decision was taken to proceed in that manner, and that's what happened. Yeah.
And as you recall, the reason was that a particular person was not available that Bosasa thought was needed.
Yes, that's the...
But would you normally need somebody to assist you for this kind of thing from the subject of the investigation?
Well,
or maybe sometimes not?
We didn't know the environment that we were going into. So we didn't know how their servers were structured and how the architecture was structured.
Yes.
So it would be very difficult to comment on how access needed to be given. Their argument was they had dedicated people that were in charge of their IT, and because of security reasons, only certain people could access it, and these people weren't available.
Mm. So, but what I'm asking is whether normally when you carry out search and seizure processes, you would depend on assistance from the subject of such a process.
No, in my experience, you wouldn't. If you execute a search warrant, for example, you would take along your cyber forensic expert.
Yes.
You would get there, you would shut down their system, and you would then image the devices or servers that you would want to have imaged, and you wouldn't require their service. You may want to speak to their IT person just to get a layout of the architecture and where there may be servers off-site or something like that which you need to know about, things like that. Yeah.
But those people, if they didn't want to cooperate, they could refuse to answer questions or not. If you ask for assistance, generally speaking, if you want to carry out a search and seizure, you come, you are ready to carry it out, but you think you must talk to some IT person, are they not entitled to refuse to answer questions if they want to?
They may be. They may. Yeah.
So it's critical that you should be able to carry out the search and seizure without,
correct,
despite any lack of cooperation.
Exactly. That's why you bring your own experts on board.
Yes.
So they can do the imaging.
Yes.
Independently of any interference from
yes.
the entity whose electronic data that you're imaging.
Yes, because purely from the point of view that normally you won't give notice to the people who will be affected by the search and seizure, it must mean that you must be able to carry it out without their cooperation, because you want to take them by surprise, and you want to be able to do whatever you need to do on your own.
Yes, I agree, totally.
But that just emphasizes the point, therefore, that it's quite strange that the SIU principals agreed to this request, because you are not meant, generally speaking, to require anybody's assistance to carry out this search and seizure.
Yeah.
So one would have expected that they would say, no, we don't need anybody. We'll be able to do what we need to do.
I agree with you. I mean,
yes.
the problem we had is as soon as Bosasa approached us and said, we understand you want to come and do a search and seizure at our premises. We are inviting you to come and image our servers. I mean, the cat's out the bag. You've lost the element of surprise. So whether they delayed it by a day or 2 days or whatever, is almost immaterial, because the mere fact that they approached us, they could have had ample opportunity to have destroyed or sanitized the servers before approaching us, you know.
And then it's even stranger that the request is agreed to.
Well, we agreed to it on the principle that we would take our experts and go and image the servers as we would if we had done a search and seizure operation.
Yes, Mr. Pretorius.
Well, as the chair says, and the legal team agrees, all these circumstances are very strange. But let's look at what the report says so that the facts are there in their proper sequence. Paragraph 5 of the report on page 50 of your bundle says the SIU employed the services of a cyber forensic expert, Mr. J. Milan, to assist it with the retrieval and analysis of electronic data obtained from Bosasa and Gillingham. That is correct.
Yes, that is correct.
Then you say the SIU served notices in terms of Section 5.2b and c of the Act on Bosasa, requesting inter alia that Bosasa provide the SIU with access to its servers so that the SIU could obtain electronic copies of relevant data relating to this investigation. Now, is it correct that you served notices on Bosasa requesting access to their servers?
Yes, that is correct.
The information that Bosasa had independent knowledge of the intention of the SIU to seize documents or documentary evidence, was that independent of this notice?
Yes, I believe it was.
So quite apart from the notice that you served, Bosasa knew in any event that there was to be a search operation?
Yes, it appeared so from the meeting that we had with them, yes.
Is that notice a notice required by the SIU Act?
Yes, that's correct. But this was done as a formality. They had already agreed to this. This was subsequent to the meeting, so they agreed for us to image their servers. We formalized it through the Section 5.2b notice to say, and that's where it says, in terms of the agreement, we would be granted access to the servers.
So the proper sequence then, as I understand it, Mr. Uleman, is that you were informed, you being the SIU, were informed that you intended to conduct a search and seizure operation.
That is correct.
You were told that by Bosasa.
Yes, that is correct.
That was in fact correct. That information that they had was correct. You did have such an intention.
It was in our planning. We hadn't determined exactly when and how it was going to be done. Yes.
Right. So you had a plan to conduct such an operation. It hadn't been detailed in any form.
No.
No particular date or process had been concretized.
Yes, that is
It was
correct.
merely a plan. That plan was obviously then leaked to Bosasa, who then said, we know of your plan to come and search for documents. Is that correct?
Based on the events that happened, that is my summation.
A meeting was then held.
Yes,
Before any formal notice was issued.
that's correct, yes.
And at that meeting, Bosasa asked for an extension of time because someone had to attend a funeral and they
That's
had
correct.
to, quote unquote, prepare. And several days later, and it's summarized in the table below, the operation then on page employees? Was this usual, unusual?
It's high, well, in my but it did seem to us as the investigating team that we would always encounter a way where SASSA had an idea, a very good idea of where we were with the investigation and what the next steps might be. So that was, and then we did at intervals receive lawyers' letters from them. And that's also what led to the interdict, which we discussed earlier. So throughout the course of the investigation, there were these regular incidents which occurred, which, as I say, to me particularly, and other members of the investigating team, it seemed that they had a very good idea, a very good knowledge of the progress of the investigation and where we were with the investigation.
You told the investigators of a visit from
in Gauteng. You want to inform me that he had a source he had in he had a list of who the investigators were conducting the investigation, and the new our identities. He went further on to say that they were trying to acquire more personal information about us, and that there was going to be trying to get my bank details. They could make a honest deposit into my bank account, and so credited me and investigate, had me removed from the investigation.
To prevent in relation to privacy in relation to your bank accounts.
Yeah. Well, when I was at the you signed that the SIU can access your bank account and personal particulars as an employee and do consistent profiling of you to see whether there's anything suspicious happening in your bank accounts or anything like that. Yeah.
What was the position with regard to make reports on the progress of the investigation?
Reports to my principals?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, given the sensitivity of the matter, we reported quite frequently on progress, particularly at the point where the interdict issue came. We had to report regularly to make sure that we were operating within the agreement and that we weren't exceeding the agreement that had been reached so that there could be any form of legal challenge. So we were reporting at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. And if we were coming across anything which was considered important, then I would relay that information immediately to my principals.
So as soon as you, in the course of your investigation and prior to the issuing of your report, came across something that you say might have been important, you reported that into the system to your superiors?
Yes.
What is the normal practice once a report is handed over, say, to the National Prosecuting Authority? What would happen normally?
Well, normally we would hand over the report. There would be we would give them an opportunity to go through the report, and then we would meet with them to see whether they had any concerns or questions or any issues of clarity that needed to be dealt with. And then we would, if they were satisfied that there was indeed a criminal offense that has been committed that needs to be investigated further, or that may lead to a prosecution, then we would embark on the process of handing over all the evidence and giving them everything that they need for a criminal docket to be registered and for the case to be continued on with the criminal prosecution.
Ordinarily, once a matter had been handed over then to, say, the National Prosecuting Authority, would you be able to detect whether there was an interest, a momentum, or a keenness to take the matter forward?
Yes, I believe so. I mean, we would have meetings and there would be regular follow-up meetings and matters would then proceed from there.
And to your knowledge and in terms of your experience, was there such a momentum of satisfactory proportion in this case?
Well, we handed over the report at the end of 2009. We had regular meetings initially, and then they raised some concerns. They said they needed to go back internally within the NPA and have the matter discussed. I did a few more presentations after that, but by the time I'd left the SIU in October 2012, the matter had not been, and the case hadn't been registered, and there hadn't been much momentum on the investigation.
And you've already commented on the delay between 2009 and 2019, a 10-year delay, and you've already referred to that as incomprehensible. Do you have any further comment in the light of your evidence now?
I can only state, I mean, I've been involved in investigations for many years. There are matters which will go through the court and then stop. But then at least people have been charged, and then there are reasons within the criminal justice system where there are delays. But this matter hasn't got there yet. After 10 years, you know, we're only now being charged. I have no insight into the investigation that was done subsequent to us handing over the SIU report to them. I mean, they may be able to answer with legitimate reasons as to why the investigation has taken so long. But in my experience, shall I say it's unique that it's a matter has taken so long to get to court.
And you've already testified as to the contents of the meeting where Advocate Similani reported to the two ministers concerned, the Minister of Justice and the Minister of Correctional Services,
Yes.
in regard to the prospects of a successful prosecution. And to put it mildly, the prospects of a successful prosecution were entirely trashed at that meeting.
It does seem so, yes.
It seems that there has been a change of heart, and perhaps there will be some explanation in evidence for that. What I want to deal with is one issue that was raised in the correspondence, and that is the visit to the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee.
Yes.
You were part of that visit.
Yes, I was.
Tell the Chair what happened, please.
Well, I mean, the SIU is required from time to time to report to Parliament on various matters.
Required by statute.
Yes, that is correct. Yes. Because I was involved in this investigation, we were giving some feedback on the correctional services investigations in general, where the head of the unit at the time, Mr. Willie Hofmeyer, he presented the SIU's some of the key findings that we had made during the course of the investigation. But to the best of my recollection, he wasn't specific with names and things like that. But he did give an indication of some of the major concerns that were arising during the course of the investigation.
Can you recall more or less when that visit took place?
I can't recall precisely. It was also in 2009, I think it was.
What was the response of the parliamentary committee or members of the parliamentary committee to the report? Can you recall?
Yeah, most of them were very shocked at what they were learning as had it been uncovered during the course of the investigation. I remember afterwards, one of the members of Parliament, we were standing talking, and he came and he explained to us that he'd never He'd never experienced such blatant irregularities and evidence of possible corruption. And he asked us to make sure that this matter gets finalized and gets given to the relevant authorities.
You've told the Chair that in 2009 the report was actually served on the relevant minister and the Department of Correctional Services.
Yes, that's correct.
Did they ever respond to you or come back to you and say, we're concerned about this, we would like to understand more about it, and we'd like some feedback from you? Did they ever communicate with you?
They communicated with us insofar as it led to the disciplinary proceedings being instituted against Patrick Gillingham. So we had a number of meetings. A disciplinary was actually convened. I met with the initiator, and we prepared for the disciplinary hearings.
Did the disciplinary hearing take place promptly? Were there delays?
No, on the morning of the date that it was scheduled to commence, Mr. Gillingham resigned, and his resignation was accepted by the department. So we did not proceed with the disciplinary proceedings. But apart from that, I was never consulted before I left the SIU on any of the other recommendations around the determination of the contracts and things and other aspects that were raised.
Because the work of the SIU does not only involve criminal prosecution, as I understand it, or investigation into criminal acts. It's wider. Tell
Yes.
the Chair about that, please.
Well, as I sort of indicated earlier, the role of the SIU is to identify and investigate maladministration, issues of state institutions, public money that is lost, and to recover those monies. So there's a big civil element to the SIU investigations. In fact, that's probably the primary focus, is to where maladministration occurs, is to make sure that that is reversed and that the remedies are implemented that are recommended for action as a result of the investigations. Many of them are civil actions, so overturning of contracts, recovering of losses, damages, etc.
Were you ever asked by the Department of Correctional Services to assist or advise in any way in relation to any civil proceedings?
Not to the best of my recollection, no.
All right. It's necessary to just go through one more piece of evidence with you, and that is the findings contained in the report. If we could go, please, to page 19.
I have it, yes.
At page 19 is an executive summary, and on that page you record the background to the investigation. Are the facts set out in that part of the report correct?
Yes, they're correct.
And if we may just satisfy ourselves that if we refer to the executive summary and the findings in the executive summary, we will have an accurate reflection of what's contained in the main body.
Yes, that's correct.
Right. Then let's deal then with the findings in respect of the kitchens tender. They appear on page 20 and 21 of the report.
Yes, I have it.
A number of findings are made. The first of which is contained in the second paragraph, which speaks about deviations from supply chain management prescripts issued by National Treasury. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
There were such deviations found by you in the procurement process.
Yes, indeed.
You also found that Gillingham, outside the course of his normal duties, played an integral role from the outset in the procurement process and was irregularly instrumental in developing the tender specifications.
Yes.
Insofar as there's already been evidence that that indeed occurred, you confirm that that is a correct reflection of your investigation and the findings of your investigation.
Yes, that's correct.
The next paragraph reads, on the evidence of a whistleblower, a former employee of Bosasa, Bosasa irregularly participated in drafting the specifications for this tender. On the evidence of the witness, the specifications were drafted in such a manner that the security aspects of the tender provided Bosasa with a clear advantage over other bidders. To the extent that Mr. Agrizi gave evidence to that effect, that appears from your report to be correct. Can you
Yes.
confirm that that's what you investigated and that's what you found?
That is correct, yes.
And then there's reference in the next paragraph to documents obtained from the computers of Mr. Gillingham and Mr. Agrizi, which confirmed irregular participation in compiling the specifications for the tender.
Yes, correct.
And then finally, you say or the report says in the last paragraph on page 20, the evidence clearly indicates that Gillingham and Commissioner MT received financial benefits from Bosasa after the award of this tender. The SIU was unable to find any lawful cause for such benefits being made to Gillingham and Commissioner MT.
That is
The
correct.
evidence further shows that Mr. W.D. Mansell and Mr. J. Smith, both employees of the Bosasa Group, were instrumental in effecting these benefits to Gillingham and Commissioner MT. Then you make certain further findings in relation to those benefits. Is that what you investigated?
Yes,
Is that what you found?
that is correct, Chair.
And you were satisfied that you had sufficient information to make those findings?
Yes.
Then you made certain recommendations in respect of the kitchen's tender. The first recommendation was that the Department of Correctional Services should consider instituting civil proceedings in the appropriate forum for the recovery of any losses that might have been sustained by the DCS on account of the award of the kitchen's tender to Bosasa. Do you know whether that occurred?
I'm not aware that that did occur.
That will have to be the subject of further evidence from the department, Chair. Then the disciplinary proceedings against Gillingham actually did occur, you've told the Chair.
Yes.
And then the final recommendation is that the NDPP consider criminal proceedings against Gillingham, MT, Bosasa, the latter's office bearers, Mansell, Agrizi, and Smith. Do you see that?
Yes.
Then, further on, you make findings in respect of access control tender, HK2 2005. This appears to be a tender awarded not to Bosasa, but to a related company within the Bosasa Group,
Yes, that's correct.
Sondolo IT.
Yes.
We've heard about that. Again, your finding is that there were deviations from the supply chain management prescripts.
That is
Correct?
correct.
Again, findings against Gillingham in relation to his participation in the award of the tender. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Similar findings in relation to irregular participation in the drafting of the bid specifications for the tender. Was that your finding
Yes, that's correct.
based on the evidence that you've discovered
That is correct.
and analyzed? And then from your findings, it appears that the award to Sondola IT was, as you referred to it in the last paragraph on that page, obviously irregular.
Yes.
And you refer to financial benefits having been received by Mr. Gillingham without lawful cause according to your findings.
That is correct.
And the evidence further shows you say that Mansell and Smith were instrumental in affecting those benefits to Gillingham.
That is correct.
You see that? Those findings that you make on page 22 and 23, which we've now summarized perhaps a little superficially, but nevertheless they're there on record.
Yes.
Can you confirm that they were actually your findings based on evidence that you examined?
Yes, I can confirm that, Chair.
In paragraph 2 on page 23, the following comment is made. The SIU did not conduct a comprehensive financial investigation, as in the case of Gillingham, into benefits Commissioner MT may have received from BSASA because of various limitations experienced during the SIU's investigation. However, the limited evidence gathered by the SIU indicated that he received benefits from BSASA a few months before the access tender was granted to Sundola. Explain to the Chair what is being said here and what the reference is to limitations, please.
Okay. So this relates to what we discussed earlier, Chair, in terms of the limitations on the scope of the investigation. So we had proceeded with the financial investigation into Mr. Gillingham, but when we got to conducting the financial investigation with Mr. MT, that was when during the period where BSASA approached the court to get an interdict against the investigation, and that was also during the period where we reached the agreement that we would not continue with the investigation into those officials.
Recommendations made by the SIU in this report appear at the foot of page 23, at least in respect of the second tender that we
Yes.
now referring to. Firstly, the recommendation was that the DCS, Department of Correctional Service, considers instituting civil proceedings in the appropriate forum for the recovery of any losses that might have been sustained by DCS on account of the award of the access control tender to Sundola. Is it also correct, may I presume, that no such civil proceedings came to your knowledge?
Yes, I'm not aware of any such civil proceeding.
Disciplinary proceedings against Gillingham are once again recommended. You've given that evidence. And then criminal proceedings are also recommended to be instituted under the auspices of the National Director of Public Prosecutions.
Yes.
On page 24, there is a summary of findings in respect of the fencing tender, HK 24 of 2005, which was awarded on 29 November 2005 to Pezulu Fencing Pty Limited, an affiliate company within the BSASA Group.
Yes, that is correct.
Again, the findings refer to deviations from procurement directives.
Yes,
Can you confirm that that's in fact what you found?
I confirm that is what we found, yes, Chair.
Once again, the evidence shows, according to the report, that Gillingham, outside of his normal duties, played an integral role from the outset in the procurement process and was irregularly instrumental in the developing of the tender specifications. You can confirm that?
I can confirm that, yes.
Further irregularities appear highlighted in the next paragraph in relation to evaluation criteria. You made those findings?
Yes, I have.
And in the next paragraph, you highlight that an issue of concern to the SIU was the fact that substantial payments were made to Pezulu at the outset of the contract without adequate performance. And you refer to the examination by SIU of payments made to Pezulu in respect of this tender, and it appears that in terms of the contract provisions, 90% of the contract price was payable on delivery of raw materials to construction sites.
That is correct, yes.
And then you made conclusions about fiscal dumping.
Correct.
You make further observations in the final paragraph on page 24 that the award of the tender was irregular because the bid didn't comply in relation to performance by a certain date
That is
with
correct.
the tender specifications. It seems too that the observation is made that in the bid evaluation committee, Gillingham scored the two service providers referred to above, that is the competing service providers who complied with the time deadlines, 0 out of 6 for time,
Yes.
and Pazulu a full 6 points, despite the fact that it expressly did not comply.
Correct.
Clearly, as you say, the SIU finds this approach by Gillingham incomprehensible.
Correct.
Do you
That
stand
is
by
correct.
that finding?
I do indeed.
Well, it seems obvious on the face of it. And in the third paragraph, the evidence clearly indicates that Gillingham had received financial benefits after the award of this and previous two tenders. In the next paragraph, you make the same observation in relation to MT that you made in relation to the previous tender investigated,
Yes.
that it was not fully investigated because of the limitations you've referred to in your evidence.
Yes, correct.
And then there was a failure to disclose benefits. Before we go to the next issue, which is the recommendations and then the final tender findings, what strikes one about reading your findings is that the evidence was fairly concentrated, fairly limited, and reasonably clear. You nod.
Yeah, I agree.
In the light of the quality of the evidence that you had and the nature of the findings that you made on the basis of that evidence, can there be any rational basis for a delay of 10 years?
In my opinion, no, I don't understand it.
And then the recommendations in respect to the fencing tender are set out at the bottom of page 25. The SIU recommends that the DCS considers instituting civil proceedings. Again, I presume your evidence is the same as in respect to the previous tenders.
Yes, that is correct, yes.
Disciplinary proceedings against Gillingham are again referred to, and criminal proceedings in the same terms as previously advised.
That is correct, yes.
Then on page 26, you deal in summary with the final tender. That is the contract awarded on 3 March 2006 to Sondolo IT.
Correct, yes.
Similar findings are made in respect of the participation of Gillingham and his receipt of benefits.
That is correct.
Similar findings to those made in respect of the other tenders. Again, you make the same observation in regard to the limitation of your investigation in relation to benefits received by Commissioner MT.
Yes.
But once again, you say the limited evidence gathered indicates that he did indeed receive benefits from Bosasa, or it reads literally indicates that he received benefits from Bosasa some months before the television tender was granted. And again, you make the same recommendations.
Correct, that is correct.
If you bear with me a moment, please. On Roman page 13, Roman numeral page 13, on page 31,
Yes, I have it.
that's the last page of the section where you set out your terms of reference.
Yes.
In the last paragraph, you say, or the report says rather, the SIU's investigation focused on the procurement process related only to the kitchens, access control, fencing, and television tenders.
Yes.
Firstly, was the SIU aware of other dealings between BASASA and Correctional Services that might have warranted its investigation?
There were indeed other tenders that were awarded to BASASA by the Department of Correctional Services, but or their group of companies, but they did not form part of this investigation.
And the reason it didn't form part of the investigation is firstly because that's what the proclamation authorizing your investigation said.
Yes, that's correct.
And secondly, you referred to a legal challenge. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that is correct.
But the point that I wish to ask about is simply this. Had the proclamation dealt comprehensively with all possible wrongdoing at the hands of BASASA in relation to correctional services, would your investigation have been different?
Yes, we would have included all tenders that had been awarded to BASASA.
Both in respect of correctional services and in respect of other departments which you were not authorized to investigate.
That is correct, yes.
And you said to the chair you had indications of irregularities, substantial irregularities in respect of other government departments.
That is correct, yes.
At page 7 of the report, you deal with the Treasury guidelines regarding budgeting for the tender process. Do you see that?
Yes.
And if you look down the page to the third last paragraph on page 44 of your bundle, a finding is made there that the DCS, Department of Correctional Services, accordingly used Section 43 of the PFMA to transfer 769 million rand from the Compensation of Employees Program to the Machinery and Equipment Program under Capital Assets. The essential question that I wish to ask you in relation to your investigation is how the Department of Correctional Services financed these projects which you investigated, and at what cost.
Yes.
Would you tell the chair about that, please?
Well, my understanding is within each government department, funds are allocated across various programs, and that is their budget that they allocate then for these projects. Once these are allocated, they then roll out the projects. But because of the amounts involved with the BASASA tenders, they took money from one particular program and then moved it around to other programs to ensure that there were sufficient funds available at all times for the tenders to be awarded to BASASA.
If one goes over the page to page 45 of your bundle, the second paragraph, you refer to a statement made to you apparently by Mr. Leslie of National Treasury, where it is said, lastly, according to Leslie, National Treasury had complained about spending such large amounts close to the end of the financial year and commented that it was equivalent to fiscal dumping, i.e. where departments spend large amounts of money just prior to the financial year end to exhaust their budget ignoring whether the department gets value or not for such spending. Do you have any, can you help the Chair to understand what you were told there by National Treasury during the course of your investigations?
Yes. So what would happen is throughout the year, when you have a program that you roll out, you spend money on that particular program. So when it comes to the issue of fiscal dumping, often what happens is departments underspend during the course of the year. And then when it comes to the end of the year, unspent money has to go back to the fiscus. But in order to circumvent that money going back, then they would use that money up on large projects or projects very close to the end of the financial year in order for that money to be allocated and then spent.
Chair, if you would just bear with me a moment, I just want to check that the review is complete.
That's fine.
The remainder of the report deals in more detail with the findings that we've already summarized in the executive summary.
Correct.
There's one aspect that I'd like to draw to your attention, and that appears at page 16 of the report, which is bundle page 53, where your investigation and the report deal with Commissioner MT's formal relationship with BSASA. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
The first paragraph under that head reads, "From the information obtained from the Registrar of Companies, Commissioner MT is the director of a company called Leonora Investment Consultancy Pty Limited. Further information from the Registrar of Companies indicated that Leonora is in one way or another linked to BSASA. These links include the following. Both Sondola and Leonora's registration document reflects Mr. Stefan Kruger as the initial director, with BGB Smith as the auditors. Both Sondola and Leonora appointed Bester Viljoen Incorporated as their new auditor in place of BGB Smith. Bester Viljoen Incorporated are the auditors for BSASA." It goes on to read, "At the time, Leonora's Incorporation," it should read, "at the time of Leonora's Incorporation, Commissioner MT was DCS National Commissioner. The timing of the registration of the above entity appears to coincide with the awarding to Sondola of the access control tender on or about 19 April 2005. And then you talk about the deregistration of Leonora 2 years later. There has been evidence concerning the assistance given by BSASA to Commissioner MT to register such an entity.
Yes.
And all I want to establish from you is to confirm that the information set out here is the result of your own investigation and an accurate reflection of the information that you investigated and received.
Yes, that is correct. So,
Chair, we have no further questions of the witness. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Allman,
thank you, Chair.
for coming to assist the Commission. If a need arises for you to be asked to come back, you will be contacted. I'm sure that you will come back if asked to.
Yes, Chair.
But thank you very much. You are excused.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Pretorius.
Chair, may we take a short adjournment before we resume?
Okay.
We do have two witnesses who are due to give evidence. Their evidence will span at least several hours.
Yeah.
There's also the intervention of a witness due for tomorrow morning,
Yes.
10 o'clock. It may be an idea to, with your leave of course, to call that witness first before we resume with the BASASA corroborating witnesses. But we're in your hands. If you wish the witness to start now and then another witness to be called in the interim, we can do that.
From what you say, there is a witness whose evidence doesn't relate to BASASA.
Correct.
And
Very brief, but nevertheless needs to be called tomorrow morning.
but that one can only be called tomorrow. It's not
Yes,
available.
not today.
But there is one or two that are available this afternoon.
Yes?
Yes.
But their evidence will have to be interrupted.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine.
And we're not
think
pressed
if we-
for time until Thursday, Chair.
Yes. Well, if we can, I think we can use about an hour or so before we adjourn, if that's fine. So if we can take the one that we can take and take about an hour, maybe adjourn at 4:30, would that be fine?
Yes, that's fine, Chair.
Yes.
But if we could have 10 minutes to
Yes.
arrange a swap over, handing up
Yes.
of documents to you.
Yes.
You don't have the bundle yet, Chair.
Yes. No, that's fine. So is it fine if we resume at 25 to 4?
Yes, Chair.
On my watch, it's about 18 minutes past now. Or what do you suggest?
No, Chair. I don't
Is-
wish to take
is-
issue
is-
with you on the time. My time is a
No,
little
no.
different.
Or would
But-
you be more comfortable with 22?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. We will adjourn and resume at 22:04.
Thank you, Chair.
We adjourn. Yes, Mr. Pretorius.
Chair, the next witness, series of
We do
witnesses.
want to hear you, Mr. Pretorius.
The next witness, Chair.
No, I was just saying we do want to hear you. So the mic went off.
Well, that's good to know, Chair.
Yes.
Is Mr. Malombo, who's given evidence previously but will continue his evidence in relation to inspections that he has conducted with Mr. LaRue.
Yeah.
He will be led, as will Mr. LaRue be led by Ms. Molefe.
Yes, no, that's fine. I guess the registrar must administer the oath or affirmation. Do that, registrar.
Temba Patrick Mulambo.
Do you have any objections to making the prescribed affirmation?
I do not have an objection.
Do you solemnly affirm that the evidence you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, I solemnly affirm. I truly affirm.
I affirm.
I truly affirm.
I truly affirm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, we will be dealing with Exhibit T11, which should be before the Chair.
You have naturally a very soft voice, but usually you are able to make sure we hear you. Just try again. For some reason, I wasn't hearing you.
Okay, Chair. I was saying that we will be dealing with Exhibit T11, and that is numbered from page 1 to 46 before the Chair.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mlambo, please refer to the bundle marked T11 before you. On page 1 to 9 of that bundle, is that your statement to the Commission?
It is my statement, indeed.
Can you turn with me to page 8 of that statement? Is that your signature appearing on that page?
It is my signature.
And still on...
Maybe bring the mic closer to you, or you go closer to the mic, Mr. Mlambo, and raise your voice a little bit higher.
Okay, I will try.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And still staying on page 8 of that bundle, the date there that is written, the 1st of April 2019, is that the date on which you signed the statement?
It is.
Yes, and I believe that there are a few matters you wish to bring to the Chair's attention before confirming the correctness of your statement.
That is correct, Chair.
With your leave, Chair.
Yeah, it appears from my statement that there's some corrections that I need to make. For example, paragraph 24 appears twice, so the second 24 is supposed to be taken
Okay,
from my bundle.
we won't effect the corrections as such, but you will draw attention to the specific lines or areas or paragraphs in your statement where there is a problem, and then you will talk to it. Is that all right?
If I understand the Chairperson,
Yes.
you are saying I must talk to the paragraphs that have got...
Well, I don't know whether what you want to deal with is in a paragraph or where it is. I'm just saying if there are corrections you want to make, we won't effect the corrections as such, but you must tell us where the problem is and then tell us what you want to say.
Yes. There is missing content in the
Yes.
statement, which in the draft is there, but I see it does not appear in the bundle. For example, if you look at...
Okay, I don't know exactly whether it's our mics again. I hear some words in your sentences and not others. Okay, let's try again.
Okay. What I'm saying, Chairperson, is that I see from the bundle that there is information that is in my draft statement which is not in the bundle, which I want to bring to the attention of the chair.
Or in other words, are you talking about maybe documents that should have been annexures but which are not here?
What I'm talking about is it's not the annexures per se, but information that forms part of my statement.
Or which has not been included?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It is there in my draft,
Yes.
but I see now when I look at the bundle, it does
Oh.
not have that information, which is very much material to this
Okay,
hearing.
okay. You would know where it would fit in, isn't it?
I do know.
Yes, so then maybe what you could do is go to where it should be and it is not, and then say, this is what should have been included.
Yes.
And then later on, the legal team will probably prepare a supplementary statement for you that will just say the following information should have been included but wasn't included, and I've testified about it. But in the meantime, you can just point out what should have been included where and what it is that should have been included. Okay, you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson.
Yes.
Firstly, in the bundle, we've got two paragraphs which state 24. So what I am saying there
Yes, do you want to tell us which paragraphs those are?
is 24.
24.
Appears twice, yes.
Or you say there are two paragraphs 24
Yes, sir.
instead of one?
Yes, Chairperson.
Okay, all right. So one should,
The second,
Yes.
the second paragraph 24 is supposed to read 25.
yes. So I guess when you get to testify about that part, you'll just say the first paragraph 24 and the second paragraph 24. So in that way, there is no confusion which one.
Agreed, Chairperson.
If we were correcting them, we may have been able to say 24A and 24B, but we are not correcting them. But there is a first paragraph 24 and a second paragraph 24.
Agreed, Chairperson.
Okay.
And then on second paragraph 24, it ends with property search results of Richards. It ends there. When it's supposed to read,
I'm sorry, you talk about how it ends. What do you say about the second paragraph 24?
the last line there reads, the property search results of Richards.
Oh, then it doesn't continue, so the sentence is incomplete.
Agreed.
Okay, what should it say?
It's supposed to read, the property search results of Richards Bay site shows the address as that of Mr. Dumieni, but ownership and registration thereof do not reveal any results. We know that the property belongs to her by her own account, but cannot be confirmed at this stage.
Yes, okay, that's how it should read, to be complete.
Definitely, Chairperson.
Okay, any other area that you want to clarify or correct?
No, that is all that I
Those were
wanted to
the-
clarify,
yes.
Chairperson.
Okay, all right, thank you. Ms. Referee, you will, Ms. Mulefi, you'll remember later on to arrange for a supplementary affidavit.
Certainly, Chair.
Yes, okay, all right.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Mlambo, do you confirm the correctness of your statement?
I do confirm.
Thank you. Please turn with me to page 1 of your statement. You're employed as an investigator by the State Capture Commission, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
In paragraph 3 and 4 of your statement, you make reference to your previous testimony given on the 5th of February 2019. Is this correct?
That is correct.
And this was in relation to the investigation into the security installations at the premises of high-ranking individuals at the cost of Bosasa. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, in terms of that evidence that you gave, Mr. LaRue had accompanied you to several sites. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And outside these premises, Mr. LaRue identified several security equipment which he said were installed by him and the special projects team.
That is correct.
After the pointing out exercise by Mr. LaRue and following investigations by yourself and other investigators of the Commission, you established that the respective properties were registered under, firstly, Ms. Nomvula Paula Mokonyane,
That is correct.
secondly, Mr. Desmond Ne and Ms. Pavalani Ne,
That is correct.
thirdly, Mr. Samson Patakhe Makwetla and Ms. Kela Leah Makwetla,
That is correct.
and finally, the Vincent G. Smith Family Trust.
That is correct, Chairperson.
Now, you have again interacted with Mr. Richard LaRue relative to other security upgrades, is that correct?
That is correct.
And did you accompany Mr. LaRue in relation to any inspections during the course of your interaction with him?
That is correct.
And was this during the course of your investigation?
That is true.
Can we then turn over to page 2 of your statement? In paragraph 5 of your statement, you deal with your interaction with Mr. LaRue in broad terms. Will you tell the Chair what you did with Mr. LaRue?
Chairperson, I was required to conduct further investigation into some of the sites that I had not visited previously. These are the sites where the installations were fitted by Special Projects Team of Bosasa. So I required Mr. LaRue to accompany me to those particular sites as a person who has been conducting these installations and also as a person who had knowledge of the places that they did the installations and fortunately agreed.
Yes. And Mr. LaRue accompanying you to these sites, was the purpose thereof to undertake a pointing out inspection?
That is correct.
Now, did Mr. LaRue know any of the address details of the properties, such as the street number or the house number of the sites concerned?
Mr. LaRue indicated from the onset that he could not recall or he didn't know the actual street addresses of the properties or even the house addresses. However, he indicated to me he knew if taken to those particular sites, he would know exactly where to go.
Yes. Can we then move on to paragraph 6, where you deal with the first property which was inspected? Perhaps before we do so, can we go back to paragraph 5? My apologies. There you also state in broad terms which properties you visited with Mr. LaRue. Can you just name the properties, or the areas rather, at which this inspection was undertaken?
We conducted inspections in 2 provinces. Firstly, the Eastern Cape, and secondly, KwaZulu-Natal. Now, with respect to the Eastern Cape, we went to properties which were associated with Minister Mantashe, our current Minister of Energy, and then and also that of Mr. Mtimkulu, Mr. Linda Mtimkulu.
And in the other province?
In the other province, which is KZN, we went to inspect the property that is associated with Ms. Dudumieni.
Yes. Now, of the 5 sites that you have alluded to, where did the first inspection take place?
The first inspection took place at the property associated with Mr. Linda Mtimkulu.
And in which area was this property located?
This was in the Eastern Cape.
In which area in the Eastern Cape?
There's a place called Colchester. So that is the place in the Eastern Cape called Colchester.
Can you spell that for the record, please?
From my memory. Okay, but I think I wrote it down, so it will be C.
Yeah, you can have a look.
Yeah. Okay, let me find Colchester here. Anyway, let me just, because I know it, it's C-O-L-C-H-S-T-E-R.
Okay.
Thank you. And on what date did the inspection take place?
This inspection took place on the 17th
Of which month?
of February 2019.
Can you recall the approximate time of the inspection?
We arrived at East London Airport at around 11 a.m. and then we drove to Colchester, which is in the region of about 3 hours difference. So upon arrival, realizing that we had ample time to ourselves because we were supposed to check in at the hotel. So in the best interest of time and the investigation, I suggested to Mr. Leroux that we at once drive to East London and to start my investigation. He agreed to that, and then we dashed off.
Now, before you went to the properties, did Mr. Leroux indicate what equipment had been installed at that property?
As far as he could recall, they had installed the electric fence, LED perimeter lights, as well as the energizer, which, according to Mr. Leroux, was installed inside the garage.
Yes. And before you arrived at the property, did he tell you whose property this was?
Well, he told me that the property was associated with Mr. MT. So right from there, I knew that we were going to a property that was associated with Mr. M2. As to whether he owned the property or not, at that point I could not verify.
Yes.
But safe to say that it was associated with Mr. Mtimkulu.
And right at the introduction of your evidence and the properties that you visited, you indicated that Mr. Leroux did not have the address details of the properties you were visiting, such as the street numbers and house numbers.
That is correct, Chairperson.
Yes. You deal with this evidence at paragraph 6. Please tell the Chair about this inspection, starting with how you found the property.
Because Mr. Leroux did not have the actual addresses, but as he had indicated earlier, that if taken to sites, he would recall. So our going there was really based on his recollection. So it was really a matter of what he could remember. So going to Colchester was not such a big difficulty because, once we arrived at Colchester, we drove around a bit and we could find the place. So we didn't really struggle. There were minor changes in terms of how the area looked like at the time, but we had arrived at the place.
So Mr. Leroux directed you until you arrived at the place?
He did.
And he directed you from the hotel where you were staying?
Well, and also as we were driving together, because we had a lot of time together, so we were talking at all times. So he told me that, look, I know where the place is, and I know what we installed. I can recall what we installed. So we didn't really have a difficulty getting there.
Yes, and you've just stated that at that point, you yourself did not have the address details of the properties that were going to be inspected.
I did not have the addresses either.
Now, was the property on a was it freestanding or was it in a residential complex?
This was in the residential complex. But let me also allude to the fact that as far as Mr. Leroux was concerned, at the time when they did the installation on that particular property, it was not a security complex. It was just freestanding houses. So he had a bit of a confusion as to what was happening at that time, because suddenly, it was a gated community, if I were to put it like that, which was not, there at the time of their work.
So being a gated community, I would assume that when you arrived, the first point of entry would have been a gate.
Yes.
So what happened when you arrived at the gate?
We arrived at the gate, we realized that, we couldn't gain access because there was, I don't know how to call it, access pad where you had to punch in the code for entry.
Yes.
But then we also realized that there were actually 2 gates there. So we left for the other gate. And upon arrival at that particular gate, we were attended by somebody. And we informed that particular gentleman, who identified himself as the manager of the complex. So I introduced myself, and I introduced Richard and told him the purpose of our visit, and the fact that we're there on investigation and we had wanted to gain entry. So it just transpired that that particular gentleman could recognize Richard Leroux from on TV during the hearings. So he allowed us entry. So what he did, he guided us to the gate that we started at, and told us that once we had the gate, he was going to open the gate for us remotely, which is exactly what he did.
Yes. Now, from the gate where you met the manager of the complex, who then directed you to the particular property that was to be inspected?
That was almost a walk in the park, because Richard knew exactly where to go. So we just drove directly to the place.
So did you at any point ask the manager of the complex where this property was situated?
I beg your pardon?
Did you at any point ask the manager of the complex where about the property is situated?
Not at all.
Okay. So you are saying that Mr. Leroux directed you to the property.
He did.
And what is the first thing you saw once you arrived at the property?
Just as we arrived at the complex, automatically we could see the electric fence because it was visible. In actual fact, even one of the perimeter lights was immediately, visible to us.
Now, when you entered the gate, was Mr. Leroux able to immediately identify where the property is situated?
He did.
Can I refer you to paragraph 7 of your statement? Did you at any point drive within the gated residential complex looking for this property?
Yes, we drove just a little bit because, in actual fact, there were a few streets that we had to drive through, but, we really didn't struggle because Richard knew exactly where to go. So
Yes.
we just drove around just a little bit, and then we just got to the property, Chairperson.
Yes. Now, you deal with this, as I mentioned, in paragraph 7 of your statement. You need not state the address of the property as is stated there. When you arrived at the property, what did Mr. Leroux say to you?
He informed me that, as he had told me, that the electric fence that was visible to us and the LED perimeter lights resembled those that they had installed as a team.
Yes. And did you find anyone at the property?
The property had no one in it, so it was locked. So the only things that we could, verify was what we could see on the outside. For example, okay.
No, carry on.
Yeah. For example, Mr. Leroux had informed me about the energizer, which, according to him, was in the garage. But because we couldn't gain access, so I couldn't verify that.
To gain access to the particular property, was there another gate that you had to go through?
There was no other gate except for, there was, because inside the complex, some properties had individual fences, boundary fences. So there was a boundary fence around Mr. Mt's property, or the property associated to Mr. Mt.
And did the property have a gate? Did the property have a gate?
It does have a gate.
So you arrive at the property and you're saying you found no one.
Yeah, we found no one.
Did you knock at the gate? Is there a buzzer at the gate, perhaps?
No, because, there was no one, so there was not even a point, because the house is just easy to, to go around, and if there was somebody, we could have easily seen, so we didn't even knock.
Yes, and did Mr. LaRue identify any security equipment?
He identified the electric fence. He identified the perimeter lights, LED perimeter lights.
Yes, and you also stated that he informed you that there was an energizer in the garage. Do I have that correctly?
Yes, that is correct.
And did he describe where in the garage the energizer is located?
Well, so far as I can remember, he said it was mounted inside the garage, so I do not recall exactly where. Safe to say that he told me it was mounted on the wall in the garage.
Yes. So it was just the electric fence and the perimeter lights that Mr. LaRue identified?
Yes.
And he could see these from outside the gate of the particular property?
Yes, you could see that easily.
So what did you or Mr. LaRue then do?
What did I?
What did you or Mr. LaRue then do?
Then I took a video and the pictures of the installations, which was the electric fence, the two LED lights that they had installed, and I also took a video.
Yes. Can we go then to Annexure TPM5, which appears on page 13 of the bundle?
Page 13.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'm there.
Can you please tell the Chair what we are looking at page 13?
On page 13, which is TPM5, this is an open gate
Yes.
at the residence that's also associated with Mr. T.
Sorry, Mr. Mlambo, you'll have to raise your voice
Oh,
again.
okay. I beg your
Yeah.
pardon, Chairperson. Yeah. On page 13, which is TPM5, it is an image of the open gate that is at Grand Bushes, which is a property associated with Mr. Mtimkulu.
Well, that you talk about an open gate that looks to me like a closed gate. Is there something I'm missing?
I'm not sure I understand you, Chairperson.
Did you say it's an open gate at TPM5?
Yes.
I'm saying that looks to me like closed.
No, it is open.
No, Chair, this is my mistake. We should be at Annexure TPM1. I apologize
Sorry?
profusely. We're supposed to be at Annexure TPM1, which is on page 9. This
Oh,
is
so
my
he's
mistake.
looking at a different page.
Yes, I would assume
Oh.
so.
Okay.
My apologies, Chair. Mr. Mlambo, please refer to page 9 at the annexure marked TPM1.
Okay.
Can you please explain to the Chair what appears on page 9 of this bundle?
Yeah. On page 9,
I'm hoping he's
the-
not going to say that's an open one too.
it is the electric fence that's mounted on the fence of, or rather on the palisades of the residence.
Yes, and is the gate open or closed?
Well, the gate is closed at this stage.
And there is what appears to be a car that appears in that image. Whose car is that?
Well, this is the hired car that I had gotten from the car hire company at the airport.
That you were using together
This
with
is
Mr.
the car
Leroux.
that we're using, Chairperson.
Yeah, okay.
And can you also then turn with me to page 10 of the bundle?
So maybe just so that that house there, that property, whose property was that?
Yeah, this is the property that is associated with Mr. Timkulu at Colchester.
Mr. MT.
Yeah, Mr. MT.
Yeah, when you say Mr. Mtimkulu, that's the same person as
Yes,
the person everybody has referred to as Mr. MT.
that is correct.
Yes.
The chairperson will realize later on in the statement that I got to find out that Mr. MT is basically the short form Timkulu, but we'll deal with that later, I suppose.
Yeah, okay, but it is Mr. MT.
It is
Okay.
Mr. MT.
Okay, that house is, you say, as you put it, associated with Mr. MT.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
Yes, and when you took the picture at TPM1, on what basis did you take that picture?
This was to show the electric fence that the special projects team had installed.
Did Mr. LaRue identify it as such?
He did identify that as resembling the one that they had installed as a special projects team.
Now, is there any particular distinguishing feature insofar as the electric fence that one would be able to notice on, whether it be on the fence itself?
I'm
or-
afraid, Chairperson, there was nothing. I had to go with what he says. But
Yes.
if you ask me if it's a fair assumption, I would say, it's a fair assumption on the basis that even before going to the site, he had told me what to expect. And indeed, upon arrival, we saw the electric fence mounted on the palisades. Whether it is the same one that they had installed or not, that's a different question.
But when you saw it, did it match the description that he had given you before you reached the house?
Yeah. Chairperson, to be fair, I didn't know, how it's supposed to look like. All
Okay.
I knew was that I was expecting to see an electric fence.
Okay.
Yes, and is there anything else in particular that Mr. LaRue drew your attention to?
With respect to,
With respect to the image at page 9, TPM1.
well, nothing more than what I've just said.
Yes, can you then turn with me to page 10 of the bundle?
Yes,
And that is annexed to TPM2.
yes.
Can you explain to the chair what appears there on page 10?
The purpose behind this particular image was to show the LED perimeter light. And I can see
The
from
what light? The what light?
LED perimeter light. Yeah.
Yes. Now, on this image, which appears to be a close-up,
Yes.
can you explain where the perimeter lights are located?
Yeah, it is mounted just on top of the wall, just below the roof, and it was facing the street.
And is this a light that was pointed to you by Mr. LaRue?
Yes, indeed.
Is there anything else on that page that he drew your attention to?
Well, nothing else.
Can you then,
And that is still the same property? that
It is
we-
the same property,
Yeah,
Chairperson.
okay.
thank you, Chair. Can you then turn to page 11, annexed to TPM3?
Yes.
Can you explain to the Chair what appears on that page?
What appears on this particular page are two lights, and one of them is the LED light, which Mr. Leroux pointed out as that which they installed. As for the other light, which will be on my right or on the right of the picture, just above the wall but below the roof, would be another light which, according to Mr. Leroux, was pre-existing. So they did not install that particular one.
Or are there two lights?
Yes, there are two lights, yes.
And one of them was installed by Mr. LaRue's team, but the other one was not?
Yeah, the other one was not, yes.
Okay.
And unfortunately, this is the closest I could get in terms of taking pictures of the particular lights.
Yes, this
Okay.
image on page 11 appears to be quite different from what appears at page 9 and 10. Is this the same side of the property that you took pictures of at page 9 and 10?
It is a different site.
And how were you able to get to the side of that property?
The property is situated particularly at the back. It's a bushy area, which is difficult, to access. So otherwise, you can only access the three sides, which is the front and the two sides, left and right. But behind there, you can't access it because of the bushes.
So you went to the side of the property, as
It
I
was on the
understand.
side of the property. And to be
And-
specific on this one, it was on the left-hand side of the property.
Yes. And who directed you to the left side of the property?
Mr. Leroux himself.
And what did he say you would find on the left side of the property?
The LED lights, one of the two LED lights that I had installed.
Yes. And you did say that before you went to the property, he had identified the security equipment that is at the property.
That is correct.
And whose property is this one?
Yeah, this property is associated with Mr. Mtimkul. It's still the same Colchester property.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You also made mention of an energizer, which you say Mr. Leroux informed you of. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you stated that the energizer was located in the garage.
That is correct.
Were you able to gain access to the garage?
We could not gain access to the garage on account that the house was locked and there was nobody to give us access there too.
And did you find anything else pursuant to the inspection?
Well, in terms of the equipment, nothing else.
Yes. And so Mr. Leroux did not point out to any further equipment?
No.
For how long were you at the property?
I beg your pardon.
For how long were you at the property?
Well, we were there for, say, approximately maybe 15, 20 minutes.
Yes. And other than the complex manager, did you come into contact with any other person?
No, not at all.
Now, following this inspection, did you conduct any investigation to establish under whose name the property was registered?
I only managed to establish later when we returned back to the office.
Yes.
And according to the search results, it is associated, well, it belongs to Mr. MT 100%.
Yes. And how were you able to establish under whose name the property was registered?
Yeah, I requested our team, to conduct, search, property searches, and then based on the address, and it was established that it belonged to Mr. MT 100%.
When did you get the address?
Because I was on site, so I could see the address. Unfortunately, I can't divulge the address here for obvious reasons, but already I had the address. So when I returned, I communicated with the search team to do property search.
Okay, so if I understand it correctly, you obtained the address once you were at the property itself during the inspection with Mr. Leroux.
That is correct.
You then, with your team of investigators, conducted the necessary searches to establish under whose name the property is registered.
That is correct.
And can you please give the full names, rather, of who the property was found to be registered under?
The property is registered under Mr. Lindam Timkulu, and according to the results, he owns it alone, 100%.
Yes.
Your voice went down again
Oh,
for
okay.
the last sentence.
All right. Yeah, according to, if I may, according to the results, the property belonged to Mr. Lindam Timkulu, 100%.
Yes. And I believe that you also took a video at the property.
I do not recall the value of the property, but it is in the documents that we had obtained.
In terms of actual registration, is it Mtimkulu that's written or Mti?
I'll have to refer back to the document.
Okay.
Yes.
Before the chair asked you a question, I was asking if You had earlier said that you took a video. I wasn't asking of the value of the property.
Yes, I did take the video.
And does the video show the security equipment that you have identified in annexes TPM1 to TPM3?
That is correct.
Chair, we needn't play that particular video.
Chairperson, with your permission, I've indicated earlier that I did not want to reveal, people's
Yes,
addresses.
yes, of
However, the video will show, hopefully the address, which will still give away the kind of information that you might
well,
not want
do
to
we,
give.
strictly speaking, need it to be shown?
No, Chair,
Yeah,
We do not.
maybe let's leave it and just carry on.
as it pleases you,
Yeah,
Chair.
okay.
Mr. Mlambo, you then deal with another property in paragraph 8 of your statement, is that correct?
Okay, what was your question?
In paragraph 8 of your statement, you then deal with another property.
Yes.
And on what date did you visit this particular property?
This was on the 18th of February 2019.
Can you recall the approximate time of this visit?
We left the hotel accommodation at about 8 in the morning. So, and about 4 hours later, we were at Green Bushes. So give or take, we were there around midday.
Now, before visiting the property, did Mr. Leroux indicate what equipment would be found at the property?
He did indicate what equipment we were supposed to find at the particular place.
And what did he say was installed at the property?
He told me that they had installed electric fence, they had installed perimeter lights, LED perimeter lights, and then also that they had installed the energizer, but that particular energizer was inside of the garage.
Yes. And before you went to the property, did he tell you whose property the equipment that you were going to inspect belongs to? Did he
ask?
tell you who the property belonged to?
Well, he told me that it's another property that is associated with Mr. MT.
And this is the same Mr. MT whom you've referred to in respect of the first property.
Come again?
This is the same Mr. MT you've referred
Yes,
to in respect of the first property.
I beg your pardon, yes, it is the same Mr. MT.
Now, before you went to the property, did either yourself or Mr. Leroux have the address details, such as the street number and house number of the property?
We did not have those.
Yes, you deal with this in paragraph 8 of your statement. Can you please tell the chair about this inspection, starting with how you found the property?
This was a bit of a tricky one for Mr. Leroux, because this property is situated at a place called Green Bushes. So it's really, in a very bushy area, very beautiful area, it's basically plots. So getting there is a bit of a challenge, and they admitted from the onset that it was just not going to be an easy ride getting there. However, driving around, you should be able to recall. So he took me there on the strength of his recollection.
Yes, and you've just testified that the property is in the Green Bush area.
Yes.
Is that correct? Now, when Mr. Leroux directed you to the property, what was the first thing you saw?
What was the first?
What was the first thing you saw at the property?
Well, the first thing that I saw was that, the gate was wide open, and but also immediately, the electric fence, which was enmeshed to the normal fence, and then I could also see the LED lights, because just from the street, you can see just about the whole of the yard.
Yes, before you go into detail insofar as the equipment, when you arrived at the property and throughout your trip to the property, it was Mr. Leroux directing you, is that correct?
Yes, he did direct me.
And did you assist him at any point?
There was no way I could assist him because I didn't know, for starters, where we were going. I was 100% reliant on him.
Yes. You say that the gate was wide open.
Yes, it was wide open.
And was there anyone at the gate?
We established just once we were there that there was no one because, I drove, just when we were at the gate, I sounded a hooter and there was no response.
So did you drive into the gate or did you remain outside the premises of the property?
No, we remained outside of the premises.
What then happened?
Sorry?
What then happened once you arrived at the gate?
Yes. There was on the right side of the house, the next door house, there was a gentleman there. So I approached that particular gentleman to find out if he knows if there's anybody at the house. And then he informed me, but no, so-and-so is there. Didn't you see him? Didn't you, pass each other on the way? I said to him, well, I don't know who stays here. And I also didn't notice any car that went past us, So then he said to me, look, he was here now, but he took somebody to the taxi rank and he should be coming back.
Yes. And after this conversation, in fact, during this conversation with who you've called the neighbor, where was Mr. Leroux?
Mr. Leroux was always in the car.
What then happened after your conversation with the neighbor?
I went back to the car and then we're driving around, but then I realized that, no, man, I do not even have the address. We're not living per se, but, we're just driving around. Then I decided, look, let's rather turn back and verify what the address is. So we went back, but then we went to the other next door neighbor. Now this time on the left-hand side of the property, the next door neighbor, which was on the left this time.
Now, the house itself that you went to, was it surrounded by, was it enclosed in any way, whether it be by fence or some sort of concrete wall?
No, they just had fences. In actual fact, I think the first property on the first neighbor, they had a wall, but you could see somebody, I think it's a precast wall. You could see people on the other side. That's why I could identify the gentleman that was at the property. Now, with respect to the second property, it's just a fence, an open fence, just like that of Mr. MT's. So I approached that particular house, and then there was a gentleman coming towards the gate. So I spoke to that particular gentleman, inquiring as to whether he knew who owned the property.
So the property being surrounded by fencing, as I understand, you could then see the exterior of the property.
That is correct.
Did you have any pointing out with Mr. Leroux at that point?
Yeah, well, he told me, he showed me that, you see the fence and those perimeter lights, those are the ones that we installed. At least they look like the ones that we installed. Because I had to make sure to say to him that, look, you cannot say for certain, if you know for certain that it is the fence, then say so. But I don't want you to speculate. So he indicated to me that at least they look like the ones that they had installed.
Yes. And when you were at the property, did you stay at the property conducting the pointing out outside the property, or did you move away from the property?
At what point?
When you were at the property,
Yes.
You've just indicated that Mr. Leroux identified certain equipment that he had earlier told you about.
Yes.
What did you then do from there?
From there, I then recalled that I must have spoken to Mr. MT before. So I went through my phone just to see if I still had his contact numbers. So indeed, I found the contact numbers.
Yes.
Then I called him.
You called Mr. MT.
I did.
And what did you say to him?
I informed him who I was. I reintroduced myself because I had spoken to him before. So, and I was assuming that he would recall my name. But I had to reintroduce myself and who I am and the purpose of my visit. He was a bit upset over the fact that he had not been notified before that I was going to come to do the investigation.
Yes.
But then, nonetheless, he still cooperated with us.
Did you make this call in the presence of Mr. Leroux?
Mr. Leroux was around, yes, I was with him.
So you say that Mr. Mti was upset,
Yes,
but that he cooperated.
yes. He was upset over the fact that he had not been notified before or earlier, that I was going to come into the investigation.
Did he give any indication or confirm whether that is his property?
Well, at that stage, we didn't even discuss ownership of the property, And I think from both of us, it was there was that assumption that it was his property. And it didn't dispute the fact that, okay, you are there to do investigation. And so that didn't really transpire at that point.
Yes. What then happened after your telephonic discussion with Mr. Mti?
Yeah. I informed Mr. Mti that I was there on investigation and the gate was wide open and there was nobody. So he advised me, he said, look, but a family member should be there. Anyways, because the gate, you say the gate is wide open, you may go in, but rather let me also give you the contact numbers of my family member and you can give him a call. I called...
Yes, continue.
Yes, I called that particular gentleman and, okay, prior to calling that gentleman, Mr. Mti had also informed me that that particular gentleman was at that point in time en route to Colchester. Remember, we are now in Green Bushes.
Yes.
And he told me that that family member, was on his way to Colchester. And yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. When he said he was on his way to Colchester, was it with reference to a property he owned there, perhaps?
Well, he said he was on his way to Colchester.
Well, did he indicate where in Colchester he's going?
Well, it didn't indicate. For some strange reason, I must admit that because I knew that Colchester, he's got a property in Colchester and that his brother was en route to Colchester. So, funny enough, I didn't really even question where in Colchester he was going, But if my memory is anything to go by, it did indicate that he was going to his house in Colchester. But I'll be fair not to really put that as a definite.
Yes, so firstly, you say that he allowed you access into the property.
He did allow us access, yes.
He then gave you a family member's number.
Yes.
And did you call this particular family member?
Yes, I did call that particular gentleman. And he informed me that he was driving and he was on his way to Colchester. In actual fact, somebody has answered the phone and said, because I do not want to divulge names, he told me that the person you're looking for is currently driving. But he still gave him the phone. And I told him that, look, we're here on investigation and I got your contact numbers from Mr. Mti. And this is the reason why we are here, so where are you? So he told me that I'm on my way to Colchester. I'll only be coming back later.
Yes.
So, but Mr. Mti had given us the permission, to take, pictures of the installations as I had requested of him.
Okay, so having been given access by Mr. Mti, did you then enter the property?
We did enter the property, yes.
What then happened?
I took pictures of the installations that were visible. The electric fence, which was enmeshed to the normal fence, and then I took pictures of the LED perimeter lights, and now I needed access to the garage.
Before you go there, the
Yes.
pictures that you took of the electric fence and the lights that you referred to, were these pointed out by Mr. Leroux?
Those were all pointed out by Mr. Leroux.
Yes. You were going to tell the chair about needing access to something else.
Come again?
You were going to tell the chair about needing access to something else.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay. You earlier stated that Mr. Leroux said that the equipment on the property was the electric fence, the lights, and an energizer.
At the energizer, yes.
And he indicated where the energizer was located.
He indicated where the energizer was in the garage.
He indicated where in the garage.
He said, as soon as you get into, you see, it is a double garage. He said on the second door of the double garage, if you open there and the middle of the left-hand side of the garage, the energizer was mounted there on the wall.
Yes. So he gave this description of the location of the energizer before you actually entered the garage.
Absolutely.
And were you able to gain access into the garage?
I called the family member of Mr. MT,
Yes.
requesting access to the garage. He said to me, it's fine, but you see the problem is the garage is locked,
Yes.
you know. So, but then in me, something said that perhaps it's not locked, you know. So I went to try the door. I opened it, indeed it opened.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Then
when you opened the garage, what did you see?
I went exactly to the left-hand side of the middle of the left-hand side of the wall.
And where was Mr. Leroux?
Mr. Leroux was in the car.
Now, you say you went to the left side of the garage,
Yes.
and this
inside.
is where Mr. Leroux had indicated the
directed
energizer would be
That is
located.
correct.
What did you then do?
I took photos of the energizer. Okay, at least I thought it was energizer because that was the only thing that was mounted on the wall, and it looked electronic to me. So I went inside. I took pictures thereof. I think I took 2 pictures, and there was a green paper tag on the side of the energizer. And then I closed the door, and then I showed Mr. Leroux that this is what I saw. He says, no, but that is the energizer.
Yes. Is there any reason Mr. Leroux did not go with you inside the garage?
Mr. Leroux, basically, his approach was he doesn't want to appear like he had influenced me in terms of, you know, what I was supposed to find out, because he had informed me what I was supposed to find, and he left it to me to find those things on my own, which is exactly what I did.
Yes. Chair, I see that it is 16:38, and I'm advised that the chair wanted to stop at 16:30.
I think you probably won't be too long, so maybe we should finish. How long do you think it will be?
There are about 3 other properties that Mr. Mlambo would have to speak to.
How long would that take? What's your estimate?
I fear giving estimates, but I think maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours.
On this statement,
Yes, Chair.
in terms of the text of the statement, aren't you left with something like 2 pages or 2.5 pages?
Well, Chair, we're currently on page 3 of the statement. We are on page 3 of the statement, which is 8 pages long. However, there are annexes to the statement that Mr. Mlambo would need to speak to.
Maybe we will, or maybe let's adjourn at 5. How is that?
As it
We are
pleases you, Chair.
We're about 20 minutes to. Let's adjourn at 5 and take it from there.
As it pleases you, Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Mlambo, you say that you then took a picture of what you believe to be an energizer.
Yes.
What did you then do?
I showed Mr. Leroux those pictures, and he confirmed that, yes, indeed, those were that was the energizer.
Can we turn to Annex to TPM 5?
Page 2.
No, this appears on page 13 of the bundle. What appears on page 13 there?
On page 13, TPM 5, this is the emphasis of this particular picture is the electric fence that is enmeshed with the normal fence.
And can you then turn to the following page, on page 14?
Okay, I beg your pardon. I think TPM 5 is the open gate.
Yes.
Yes, and then The next
Can we-
page,
The following page, page 14, annex to TPM6, what appears there?
yeah, there it's actually the electric fence that is enmeshed to the fence.
And is this the fence that was identified by Mr. Leroux?
Yeah, it is the fence that is boundary fence of Mr. Mt's property.
Yes. Can you also turn to the following page, page 15, annex to TPM7? What appears on that page?
On top of on the wall, but mounted on just there on top is an LED perimeter light.
And is this the LED light that was pointed to by Mr. Leroux?
That is correct.
On which side of the property is this light located?
This is on the same Green Bushes property related to Mr. Mt.
Yes, but on which side of the property would it
Oh
be?
yeah, this is facing the street.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you then turn to page 16, annex to TPM8?
Yes.
What appears on that page?
At the top corner of the wall and on the roof is another LED light.
And this light was identified by Mr. Leroux.
Come again?
This light was identified by Mr. Leroux.
It was identified by Mr. Leroux.
And where about is the light positioned insofar as the direction of the house?
Yeah, this is also facing the street, but on the left corner, on the left top corner of the house.
Yes. After taking these pictures, what did you then do?
After taking the pictures, I then left the property.
Yes. And you obviously left with Mr. Leroux.
Yes, indeed.
Did you ever speak to Mr. Mt again?
No, I never spoke to him again.
And did you ever speak to Mr. Mt's family member again?
No, I did not, so far as I can recall.
Can you then-
I must have informing the family member that the garage door was actually not locked, and also that I got in, took photos of the LED light, and closed and left.
Yes.
Yes.
And in the garage, can you turn to page 17, annex to TPM9? What appears on that page?
On that page is what I got to learn later was the energizer.
Yes. And you say that this is the only equipment that was mounted on the wall.
Yes, this was the only one that was mounted on the side of the wall where
Locate-
I was informed.
Sorry, located where Mr. Leroux had said it is located.
That is correct.
And on the following page, page 18, annex to TPM10, is that the same device that appears there?
It is the same energizer.
The following page, page 19, annex to TPM11, can
Yeah.
you describe to the chair what appears on that page?
This is the green paper tag that is attached to the energizer.
And did you show this picture to Mr. Leroux?
I did.
And what was his comments about it?
I told him that I took the picture because I thought maybe it had to do with the serial number, in which case at a later stage when I would be expected to verify, I would verify. But also, I was doubtful it could be a serial number because it was on a piece of paper which could be removed. But I still, for the benefit of the fact that I was there, and if that particular piece of paper could mean anything at all.
And following this inspection, did you conduct any investigation to establish under whose name the property is registered?
Yes, I did contact our search team to identify who the property belonged to, and it was established that it belonged to Mr. Mt.
And how were you able to establish this?
From the records of the search, property search, it did indicate that it belonged to Mr. Mt, and
how
100% so.
And how did you identify the address?
Because I had been on the property and I'd seen the property and I had the address.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can we then move to the next property, which you deal with at paragraph 12? On what date did you visit this site?
Paragraph 12.
That appears on page 4 of the bundle.
Okay. Okay, this was on the 19th of February, 2019.
And can you recall the approximate time of the visit?
Can I do what?
Can you recall the approximate time of the visit?
Yeah, we left the hotel at about 8 a.m. after breakfast, and we could have driven in the estimate of about 3 hours towards a place called Elliot.
Yes. And before you went to the property, did Mr. LaRue identify what equipment would be found at the property?
Yeah, he informed me that at the first property that we were supposed to go to in Elliot, he informed me that they installed the CCTV cameras, and they installed LED lights. They installed monitors and the gadgets that had to do with the functionality of the CCTV cameras.
Yes, and you have just stated that the property was in Elliot. Where is that?
Elliot is in the Eastern Cape.
And did he say whom this property belongs to?
He informed me that the property was associated with Minister Mantashe.
And how did you find the property?
Again, this is one of those properties where Mr. LaRue informed me that it would be difficult to describe, but if we drove there, he would be able to, although it not, with such ease, with some relative difficulty, you'd still be able to identify that particular property. So we drove there.
Yes. And in paragraph 12, you deal with a certain lodge, which we will return to. But for now, can you confirm that you reached the place where Mr. LaRue was directing you to?
We did reach the place where Mr. LaRue directed us.
And was there a gate leading into the property?
Yes, there was a gate that leads to the property. But before you get to the actual gate that leads to the property, you had to drive through some dirt road, because the area, it's full of farms, maybe private farms, and it was a hilly and a very beautiful scenic place.
Yes, so what did you then do when you arrived at the gate of the property?
When we arrived at the gate of the property, I called, I don't know whether it's a PA or the bodyguard of Minister Mantashe. And the purpose thereof was to let him advise the minister that I was at the property and I wanted to verify our own investigation on the installations that were purportedly have been done by the Sondolo Sasa Special Projects team.
Yes, and did you find this person that you called?
Unfortunately, the phone just rang and there was no reply.
Yes.
Yes.
What did you then do at the gate?
I then tapped the gate, for attention. There was no response. But then there were two gentlemen not far from the gate that were fixing a tractor. I approached those two gentlemen because I had to ask them if they knew who was in the house. So they said, look, but there is somebody there. Just go in there. I said to them, look, already I can see a dog, And then this one gentleman says, no, but it won't bite. I said, well, look, I don't trust dogs, So I'm a stranger, So one of the gentlemen offered to take me into the yard to look for a lady that he told me that was looking after the property.
Yes. So when you could see the dog, this was while you were at the gate?
Yes, I was at the gate.
And what was surrounding the house? Was it fencing or was there any concrete that was surrounding the property?
No, it was just a fence.
Just a fence?
Just a fence,
So you
yes.
could see into the property?
Yes, you could see the property. You could see, the cameras. You could, basically, the house was just bare,
Yes.
from the outside. You could see everything.
Yes. Did you then gain entry into the property?
Did I?
Did you then enter the property?
Yes, I did, with the assistance of the gentleman, one of the guys that were fixing the tractor.
And did you drive in or walk in?
No, I just walked in with him.
With the
with the
gent-
gentleman, one of the gentlemen that was fixing the tractor.
And where was Mr. Leroux?
Mr. Leroux, at all times, he was in the car. He basically didn't get out of the car at that point.
Yes.
Yes, I'm the only one that had to go in and, find the person that was responsible for the property.
Yes. And where did he say that the equipment is located on the property?
Well, he informed that even before we left the hotel. Remember, from the onset, we knew why we were going to the Eastern Cape, because I had said to him, I want you to take me to the places where you say you did installations, So, and on our way, he even told me that, no, at this particular property, we installed, the LED lights, this CCTV camera, and, we installed the monitors.
Yes. And does he indicate where in the property those,
He did indicate exactly where I was supposed to find the equipment.
and where did he say you would find it?
With respect to the monitors, he informed me that if you get into the property, as you pass the kitchen, there's a passage on the left. If you turn right into the passage, you'll see on the left there will be a bedroom. There you'll find the monitor and the equipment that have, to do with the functionality of the CCTV cameras.
Yes. So you entered the property with one of the gentlemen who was fixing, I think you said, a tractor.
Yes.
And did you meet anyone at the property?
Did I?
Did you meet anyone once you had entered the property?
Yeah, basically, he called for the female person that was working there, and there was no response. So he took me around the property, and there where we met this particular female person.
Yes.
Yes.
What did you say anything to her?
Oh yes, I had to introduce myself and the purpose of my visit, including showing her the identity card that I had with me.
Yes. And during this time, Mr. Leroux is still in the car.
All that time, Mr. Leroux was in the car.
And what did the female person you met say?
What is?
The female person you say you met, what did she say?
Well, she was a very kind person. She listened to my story, and she let me into the house, basically. But before we could even go into the house, I had to invite Mr. Leroux, because he was still outside in the car, outside of the yard.
Yes.
Yes.
And when you invited him, did he enter the yard?
He did enter the yard.
What then happened?
I introduced Mr. Leroux to this female person. I want to be politically correct, because I hear now, if you say woman or a lady, some people don't kindly. But anyways, this female person, then I introduced Mr. Leroux to this female person, and it was all systems go. But Mr. Leroux indicated to me that, Pat, I told you where to find stuff, I'm not going in. And I had to respect that. In any event, it suited me, because if he told me where to find stuff, there was not even a need for him to go in, because then I was expecting to find the stuff on my own.
Yes. When you say he did not want to go in, you're referring to the actual house itself?
Yeah, the inside of the house.
So he stayed outside?
He stayed outside, yes.
Did you then enter the house?
Yes, at all times in the company of the female person that was with me.
Yes. And where's the first place you went to when you entered the house?
Upon entering the kitchen and towards the passage, and I turned right into the passage and immediately left, there was a bedroom, and we got into that particular bedroom, and I took pictures. Well, I first took videos of the stuff that was visible, which was the monitor and the equipment that had to do with the functionality of the CCTV cameras.
Yes. Now, where you found this monitor, was this as directed by Mr. Leroux?
This was exactly as I was directed by Mr. Leroux.
Where did you then go?
Then after that, we went to another bedroom whose door was facing the passageway.
I'm sorry, you went into another?
A bedroom, the second bedroom.
Yeah, you see, I'm very uncomfortable about you going into somebody's house without having talked to them in advance, without any court order, without anything, going into their bedrooms. Why were not proper arrangements made? Why were proper arrangements not made in advance?
Chairperson, firstly, let me accept the criticism. I accept the criticism positively. As far as I'm concerned, there was no bad intention. Safe to say that I was doing investigation. And if it was an oversight on my part, that I accept as...
I know from reading the statement that subsequently both Mr. Mantashe and Mrs. Mantashe called you and expressed their strong disapproval, subject to what may be said later on. I think that there should be proper justification before certain things are done. I would be very unhappy if somebody just rocked up at my house and spoke to whoever they found there and got into my house and started taking pictures and all of that. I think it's not right. The legal team should apply their mind to this issue and prepare something that document, and maybe in an open hearing, maybe they can just address me on whether it's the right way to do things. Just because we are investigating, we can't just do things anyhow. We've got to respect other people's rights. We have got to respect people's privacy. If we have got to do certain things, there must be proper justification. And so I'm just expressing my immediate reaction. It may be that when the legal team looks at the whole thing properly and they address me, they might be able to say there was justification, but at this stage it just doesn't seem to me to be right. And maybe I should just emphasize a point that I've made to both the legal team as well as the investigation team, that everything that the investigators do must be done on the guidance of the legal team. So even that visit should have been done on the guidance of the legal team. Now, whether there was guidance from the legal team or not, I don't know, but it's important that things be done properly. Okay, all right.
Certainly, Chair. Mr. Mlambo, you were then describing the first room that you entered in the house, and you have said that this was as described by Mr. LaRue.
That is correct.
Chair, I'm informed that it's 5 o'clock, and would this be an opportune time to
adjourn?
adjourn?
All right, I think we must adjourn. I assume that you anticipate taking another 30 minutes or so with him?
Certainly, Chair.
Yeah, and then there are 2 other witnesses tomorrow. How long should they take in terms of your estimates?
Chair, the witness that follows after Mr. Mlambo is Mr. LaRue, and his evidence should take at the most half an hour. And I believe there's another witness whom I think Mr. Pretorius can address you on.
And Mr. Pretorius, how long are you the one who knows how long the other one will take?
Well, Chair, there are 2 witnesses, including Mr. Mlambo, who will deal with the inspections.
Yes.
That should take another hour or so tomorrow.
Yes.
Then there is the witness dealing with the evidence regarding the evidence of fakey mentor.
Yes.
That witness shouldn't take very long at all.
Is that the...
Daphne Nkosi,
oh, okay.
Shile Nkosi.
So tomorrow, in terms of witnesses, we should be able to do with 3 hours or not?
No, and then there's the evidence of the NPA prosecutor, Mr. Cook.
Yes.
And she will take, I'm not sure of the exact detail, but almost a day.
Okay. So we might end up using the whole day?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Should we start at 10 or should we start a little earlier tomorrow?
Well, we have Wednesday as well, Chair, so
Yes.
10 is fine. The time is
Yes.
taken to prepare bundles, prepare witnesses, and the fakey mentor witness, or witness to deal with evidence of fakey mentor, has
should
been
be very
told
short.
should be here at 10 o'clock.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's start at 10 tomorrow then.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. We'll adjourn now and we'll start at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. We adjourn.